Hello, welcome to Keg That's YouTube channel. I have recently done a Partigyle Brew and the beer is ready to taste today and we're going to go over that. But what is a Partigyle Brew? It's where you brew a large batch of beer and you split the runnings during the sparge into 3 different beers. Well, can be 2 or 4, there's no set number, usually 3 though. So the first runnings are of course very high gravity and you use that to make a strong beer. The second runnings are usually an average strength beer, and then the third runnings are of course much weaker, and so you'll use that for say a 2-3% type beer. It's a very traditional British way of brewing. A lot of British brewers used to use this method and some still do, just to make a strong beer like a barley wine, and then more sessionable beers like say best bitter or a mild or something like that. So I attempted this and my aim was to make an imperial IPA, a best bitter and a porter. And if you're wondering how I can get a dark beer out of that grain bill, I will explain that to you in a bit. So what was my recipe? So a Partigyle Brew is actually very good for using up ingredients you have left over. And so my recipe sounds kind of random, but I pretty much just threw whatever open grains I had into this batch. So I had 10 kilos of Marisotta, about 2 kilos or just a bit over of pilsner malt, 500 grams of dextrin, 255 grams of extra light crystal, 49 grams of Munich and 24 grams of Cara Gold. So that was the base malt for all of the beers, and then I split my beers into 3. The first one being an imperial IPA, and I used all my own homegrown hops, and for that one I used 60 grams of Fuggles for bittering, and then at flame out I put in 99 grams of Chinook, 89 grams of Cascade and 124 grams of Brambling Cross. Batch number 2 is the best bitter, and for that one I used a single hop Jester. And I've actually got another video coming out soon about what Jester is like as a hop, a deep dive into that hop. And I used 15 grams for bittering, 20 grams at about 15 minutes, and 20 grams at 5 minutes, and 45 grams at flame out. And then for the porter, I used loads of my own homegrown hops again, and that was 30 grams of Fuggles at 60 minutes for bittering, and then 68 grams of Sriracha Ace at 5 minutes, along with 39 grams of Fuggles. So there are a couple of ways of doing this. You can make 3 times the malt bill, which is sort of what I was kind of going for. Or you can actually do a 25 litre brew and then just make 3 smaller beers in terms of volume from that. But I decided to make a lot. As you can see, the mash tun is very full. So I did the mash in and then the recirculation. And then the sparge, I had to be careful not to overflow because often I don't keep that good an eye on my sparge and it does fill up a bit more than it empties, so I just had to keep a really close eye on what was going in and what was coming out. For each batch I wanted to collect 23 litres boil volume. I have about 5 litre boil off rate, so that would give me about 18 litres into the fermenter, and then that would be a good amount to put into a keg. And I've got the first batch filled there and it's very dark, and if you compare it actually to the second batch, they look very similar. Once all the sparge water was out the kettle, I got started on the boil for the first batch just to try and speed things up. Originally, I was going to boil over 2 days, so I'll do 1 batch on brew day and then boil the other 2 batches the next day, but I actually had the time to boil all 3, so I did. Batch 2 actually came out with quite a high pre-boil gravity, so I watered it down a bit. I added a bit more water to it just before the boil. And then for batch number 3, I did what's called capping, and this is how I got it into a dark beer as opposed to a pale beer like the first 2. Capping is where you put in a different malt for the last sparge, And actually it's done a lot for things like making a black IPA or a dark lager. But with this one, I was hoping to get quite a bit of the chocolate malt character. So I put in about 500 grams of chocolate malt, put it in, and I actually gave it a bit of a stir after a bit. And then I just boiled each one as its own standard boil, and I did one of them as a pressure ferment, and that was the stout. So let's see how they have come out. So the 3 beers are ready to drink, and I realized also I didn't mention the yeast that I fermented them with. So they're all Kvike beers. Here we have the Imperial IPA that was fermented with mid-bust. We got the best bitter here and the porter here, both of which were fermented with Skara. Again, another Kvike yeast. So let's start with the Imperial IPA. The original gravity was an estimated 1.110, and I say estimated because the hydrometer didn't go that high. And so I'm guessing it's that it finished at 1020. Basically, it came out at around 11%. So it's got a bit of a kick to it. It's very hazy. I've only poured a small bit as well because it's a tasting of what others have tasted, and also it's 11%. So it's very hazy, and I think it's because Kvike yeast doesn't really flocculate too well, I found. I'm not really bothered by that. I mean, if I was going to enter it into a competition, I would be a bit more cautious, but it's just for me to drink, so I'm not that bothered. The aroma is overripe mango, kind of getting like fig, getting like orange and some citrus. I am getting a bit of alcohol on the nose as well. It's actually a lot smoother in the flavour than it is in the aroma. So perhaps there was a small bit of harshness coming through and it's gone in the flavour. So it might just need a bit more time to condition, because what I am getting are really nice, smooth, like mango and tropical fruit flavours with none of that alcoholic bite I was kind of expecting from the aroma. I'm not getting a great deal of malts. I'm getting papaya and passion fruit and that sort of thing. I'm not getting a great deal of citrus, which I would expect from some of the hops that I put in this as well. But it's very pleasant. It's got quite a thick mouthfeel because the finishing gravity was quite high. So it's a bit like drinking a fruit juice. That's the Imperial IPA, beer number 2. Hang on, I'm just gonna clear my palate between beers. Beer number 2. This is the best bitter with Jester hops. So the aroma is kind of fruity, and by fruit, I guess I mean berries. It's quite subtle, really. I'm gonna make another video about this beer specifically, so I'll go into a bit more detail in that video. But yeah, I'm getting some nice berries like blackberries. I'm getting a malty finish, so kind of like crackery. There's quite a bitter finish as well, and it's actually a lot drier and perhaps a bit easier to drink than beer number 1. So the OG of this beer was 1050 and it came out at 4.8%, so far more sessionable than the Imperial IPA. And the porter, and this is going to be an interesting one because the OG was 1022, and that's closer to a finishing gravity than a starting gravity. So I was wondering how it would come out. It's 2.8%. It's probably the least alcoholic beer I've ever made. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So I just want to comment on the appearance, as that's the obvious difference. I probably could have used more chocolate malt, as it's a very dark brown as opposed to black. The Sriracha Ace really comes through on the aroma. So I'm getting that kind of herby dill aroma. Also getting like a nice honey notes coming through. So it's got a kind of malt sweetness to it. The body is slightly thinner than beer number 2, as I kind of would expect. I am getting a hint of the chocolate malt, but it's mostly a herby, earthy flavour with some bubblegum notes. And it's all about the hops, this one, really, with quite a punchy bitterness in the aftertaste. Like, I know it's a low ABV, but it doesn't actually taste it. It's quite full. It's very full flavour. I have actually got 3 very different beers out of one batch, and it did take a while to make, but I'm actually really pleased with it. Would I do this for every brew? No. It was quite a bit of work, but I think the beers have come out really well. I think maybe an extra week conditioning and they will be perfect, and I'm really happy with this. I've got 3 beers from one batch. If you found this video useful, please do give a like, please subscribe and comment below to let us know how you got on with your Partigyle brew, or if you have any questions about this. Thank you.